UFC 262 Oliveira versus Chandler. Welcome to another UFC analysis video by Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. And here at Boxing MMA Picks, we give you our UFC fight by fight analysis, letting you know which bets are worth it which fights are worth it from a UFC Vegas betting perspective. Of course, we let you know which fights you perhaps want to avoid, which underdogs are providing some good value, and if you stay till the end of the video, we may even give you some parlay action as well. Of course, we got our prelim video out the way already. Coming up next is our main card video. This is a pay-per-view event. This is in front of, I think, 13 or 17,000 fans in Houston, Texas at the Toyota Center. We know the card is going to be revamped a little bit with one fight being called off on the main card, but we're going to call it the way we see it for now until it is rearranged. So for now, what we have is a 4-fight main card, some really good fights on here. Why don't we get into fight number one? We have Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza. Now I'll start with this one. Now this is a tough fight in a lot of ways. I'll break down each fighter. If you look at, first of all, any Edson Barboza fight is a tough fight to call. I think that's in some ways any Shane Burgos fight, especially at this level, is a tough fight to call. So that alone kind of tells you how dangerous this one could be in either direction. Looking at Shane Burgos, I mean, it's been almost a year since his loss to Josh Emmett. It was a pretty close fight. I wouldn't say he arguably won the fight, but he did perform well throughout the course of the fight. What was interesting there was that Emmett, Emmett matched him enough on the feet. And Emmett had a knee that was compromised very early in that fight and ended up getting the decision. And it was really that third round where Emmett got the two knockdowns. The two knockdowns on Shane Burgos. That's really what made the difference in terms of him getting the decision. Somewhat surprising at the time, I would say, even though Josh Emmett, of course, is a legitimate fighter. When looking at Shane Burgos' style, he likes to come forward, good pressure. He really trusts his hands, and he really has good hands. Really likes to engage. I'm not going to say he's the most elusive defensively. He hits hard and he gets hit hard. Again, you look at that pace that he throws, 7.31 significant strikes landed per minute. And we know that he's been in the UFC for quite some time. So that's a very legitimate 7+ significant strikes landed per minute. I will say he has a chin, though. Again, he gets hit hard, has a chin. He's only been KO'd by Kelvin Kattar. He was knocked down a few times by Josh Emmett, as I mentioned. But again, that chin is very tough. When we look at Edson Barboza, on the other hand, I mean, he's always going to be dangerous on the feet, right? I mean, coming off of a win versus Makwan Amirkhani. This is also his third fight at featherweight, 145 pounds. Of course, we know he was a contender at 155 earlier in his career. Stylistically, we know Edson Barboza at this point. Kickboxer, very quick with his strikes, good feints, good fakes, good movement. Of course, we know how brutal those kicks are of his as well. Has a lot of pop on his punches, especially in this 145 weight class. And generally, good takedown defense as well, especially, lately in some ways. I think it's really only the highest level of wrestlers that have gotten him down with ease. Otherwise, he has shown some reliable takedown defense. I don't think that'll matter in this fight, though. I think, this fight is definitely going to stay on the feet. I think both of these fighters are pretty big for featherweights. And both of these guys are dangerous on the feet. This has fight of the night written all over it. Fight of the night is almost theirs to lose at this point, and this fight hasn't even happened yet. But this one, in this coin flip, I kind of want to go with Edson Barboza. I think he's going to game plan a little bit better. I think, his stand-up is going to be maybe a little bit more diverse. We know Shane Burgos is heavy with the hands in terms of a hand-heavy approach, whereas Barboza, I think he's going to mix in the punches with the kicks really well. I think Barboza is also going to have the speed advantage. But again, this is a coin toss. Anything could happen. I'm just going to enjoy this as a fan. I'm absolutely not going to bet on it. But you put a gun to my head and you say, pick one of these fighters to win. I'm leaning on the side of Edson Barboza. I think he has kind of a second run in him in this featherweight division.
Yeah, this is really a tough fight because when you look at the styles, man, Barboza does not like pressure fighters, and Burgos is a pressure fighter. But the problem with Burgos is he gets hit a lot. He doesn't have the best defensive striking, so he does get hit a lot. And he's one-dimensional in his approach. Just he's a boxer. He's looking to use his hands. Barboza obviously has the kicking advantage. I'll give Burgos the boxing advantage. But Barboza, again, yeah, he can mix it up a lot better. And Barboza's, he won his last fight against Makwan Americani. But his two fights before that against Dan Ige and Paul Felder, he definitely won those fights. Watch those fights again if you thought Ige and Felder won. He definitely won both of those fights. Close fights, but he won. He definitely, even MMA Decision, check that website out. Like, it's almost unanimous on the people watching that on what do they call the reporters? Those guys all went with Barboza in both of those fights, right? So I like Barboza in this spot. I think he's going to utilize those leg kicks. I think the leg kicks are going to be a big thing here because when you look at when you get a kickboxer, and Barboza is considered a kickboxer, when you get a solid kickboxer versus a solid boxer, and Burgos is a good boxer, UFC level. When you get those two guys and you put them in the ring and a striking match, and I think it's going to stay striking, the guy with the more tools has more ways to win this fight. So I'm going to go Barboza here. But again, he's been knocked out, right? And Burgos has a chin, and Burgos can definitely knock him out. But I'm going to go Barboza here. I just think that the leg kick's going to add up, the body kicks. He's going to fight good at range. And don't sleep on Barboza's boxing. He has sneaky hooks, and he has speed, right? That's one thing he does have is speed. So I'm going to go Barboza. I think he's going to be able to land a lot and land a better shot. So Barboza's my pick.
Yeah, I think we're thinking along the same lines for this first fight of the main card. Why don't we move on to fight number 2 in that case? We have Katlyn Chookagian versus Viviane Araujo. How do you feel about this one?
Man, Katlyn's one of those fighters that just knows how to win. We spoke about that with Trezano last week, and somehow he got the judges to give him the win, a fight that I believe he lost, but that's another story. So Katlyn's another one of those fighters that puts on a lot of activity, and it appears, even when she's not landing, it appears she is landing. Like, she just has that visual look where she's always working, and it works in her favor when it goes to decision. In this fight against Viviane Araujo, when it comes to the striking, I think Viviane Araujo has the better striking. I think Viviane Araujo is going to be able to land the better shots. I don't think she's going to be as active as Chookagian, but I definitely think she's going to be able to land the better shots. I also believe that Araujo is going to be able to hold her own in the grappling. She might be the one to get the takedown because she's the more explosive athlete. Again, Chookagian's smart. She usually wins fights by using her kickboxing. But in this fight, I don't think she has the kickboxing advantage. When she didn't have the kickboxing advantage against Shevchenko and Antonina, she utilized a lot of wrestling, a lot of grappling. In this fight, though, I don't think it's going to be that easy to drag Araujo down to the ground 3 rounds. I don't believe so. I think Araujo's going to get at least 2 rounds here. Araujo's my pick. I like her. I think she's the better fighter. I just believe that she's a better fighter. I think Chookagian's the smarter fighter, and Chookagian definitely can win this fight by showing a lot of activity for the judges. But I think when it gets down to it, when you really look at the styles, the way they fight, if this stays standing, Araujo, you got to believe, is going to be moving around the ring with the better footwork, landing the better shots. And she's not a slouch in the grappling. I know she got taken down by Jessica I, but I don't think Chookagian is going to be able to utilize that. I think that Araujo learned from that loss. And as you see in her next 2 fights, she fought another grappler heavy fighter in Roxanne Modafferi, and she was able to keep this on the feet. Like, she was the one get the takedown. So she fully changed her style. And yeah, I like her in this spot. I think that she's going to be ready for whatever grappling Chookagian brings. because I think that when Araujo is winning the stand-up, Chookagian's going to go for the takedown. And at that point, Araujo's going to stuff that takedown, and that's going to kind of dictate the rest of the fight. So I'm going to go Viviane Araujo. I think she can get at least 2 rounds here.
Yeah, this is a very tough fight. Chookagian, she is coming off of a win versus Cynthia Calvillo 6 months ago. Pretty much picked her apart in that fight. You know, really good range fighter. Some Muay Thai clinch, active striking. Really hard to close range on her for some of her opponents. She can definitely be taken down. You know, she has a pretty good high guard. She'll attempt a triangle, but she will stay on her back. Right, only 51% takedown defense in 12 UFC fights. So that definitely could be a path here for Viviane Araujo here. You know, of course, we know Chookagian is going to have the cardio advantage. We know she's going to push a great pace. We know she's going to keep coming at you. You know, good combinations, good boxing, good 1-2s. You know, Araujo, on the other hand, very dangerous on the feet, especially early in the fight. You know, very explosive stand-up, has the athleticism advantage, has a lot of pop in her punches, combinations, good movement. You know, pretty light on her feet as well, right? You know, she presents a pretty fluid style of stand-up. And again, to your point with her grappling and wrestling, we can't slouch at that at all. I mean, she used her strength, and she can use her strength when needed. We saw it in the fight versus Roxanne Modafferi. She had a lot of moments where she took down Modafferi, used her strength, showed her grappling, showed her wrestling. I think the biggest factor in this fight is potentially the resume to some degree. I mean, I don't think Araujo has fought the same type of fighters that Chookagian has fought. It could play a factor in here. I'm not going to say it's going to be a huge factor, but I do think the biggest factor is going to be the cardio, right? For some reason, this fight has Jeff Neal versus Neil Magny written all over it. You know, we expect the bigger puncher, even though Jeff Neal was the better boxer as well, but we expect the bigger puncher to kind of implement that pressuring big punch style, but somehow the more active, somehow the better cardio, somehow the better engine, the better activity, somehow it gets it done. I could possibly see that happening in this fight. Again, I want nothing to do with this from a betting perspective, because I think both fighters have a legitimate reason to win this fight. I think takedowns could be a factor here if Araujo wants to use them, and if she has the opportunity to use them, because then I think physically she'll have the strength to get it done. And I think, again, Chookagian, she is takedownable, if that's even a term. But I think somehow Chookagian's going to get it done. To your point of her just finding ways to win fights, I think this is going to be one of those fights where Araujo looks real good in round 1. Round 2 is a coin flip, and then Chookagian, you know, wins round 3. And I mean, this is going split decision in one way or the other, the way that I see it. So I don't think you're wrong with either pick. But in my coin flip, I'm going with Katlyn Chookagian, again, in a tough matchup that I'm not going to advise anyone to bet on. Why don't we move on then to fight number 3? And of course, this is the co-main event of the evening. We have Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. I know we were talking about this fight for quite some time before, of course, we're on this video talking about it today. Why don't I start by breaking down both fighters, and let's sort of see where we go from here. Tony Ferguson, he's coming off of a bad loss versus Charles Oliveira via decision. Of course, we know that was 6 months ago. And then, of course, Justin Gaethje 1 year ago, he suffered that 5th round TKO loss. Stylistically, who is Tony at this point in his career? I mean, still a lot of the same switch stance style fighter, very unorthodox type of striker, good punch kick combinations, you know, borderline capoeira style at times in terms of the fluidity of his feet. And that presents real timing problems for his opponents. You know, pretty good grappler, especially off of his back, good takedown defense as well, which definitely will play a factor in this fight, because Beneil Dariush, he will try to get the fight to the ground, and he may get the fight to the ground, but we see here 2 takedowns per fight at 32% accuracy. Good takedown defense can definitely nullify that. Looking at Beneil Dariush, on the other hand, I mean, he's coming off of a split decision win versus Diego Ferreira. I thought he won unanimously in that one, if I'm not mistaken, but again, he got the split decision win. We know Dariush to have solid stand-up. We know that he likes to throw a lot of kicks and combinations, good pop in his kicks as well. Definitely has some pop in his punches. Those pops in his kicks, that could be a factor here versus Tony Ferguson. We've seen other fighters use that in the past against Tony Ferguson. A pretty long striker as well, even though it's interesting to note he is going to be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. Obviously, we know Tony Ferguson to have very long limbs. So even though he is a long striker, Beneil Dariush probably won't be a factor in this fight versus Tony Ferguson. Good striking defense, good diversity in his striking as well. I like his clinch, knees within the clinch against the cage. He can keep you on the cage, physically strong as a 155er. Good takedowns, despite the numbers, as I mentioned, 2 takedowns a fight, 32% takedown accuracy. Does have some good takedowns in general, right? He'll fake, he'll level change, sort of regardless of your ability on the ground. So I do look for him to test it at least early in the fight versus Tony Ferguson. What I will say is this, again, not really knowing which direction I want to go in this fight. Tony Ferguson, I mean, he's very dangerous in a 3-round fight, right? We know that output that he has. We know the cardio tank that he has. There really could be a problem in this fight. I imagine Tony Ferguson has to be really hungry in this fight for a good performance. I mean, it's been 2 years since his last win. And you know what? I mean, we talked about this fight before we're on this video today, and my initial pick was Dariush. I said, oh, for sure, that's got to be Dariush. I don't really believe in Tony at this point in time. But you know what? I'm kind of switching. I'm kind of changing my mind here. I can really see Tony Ferguson pulling out the win. Obviously, we know Beneil Dariush is legit, but stylistically, the respective step down in competition for Tony Ferguson, paired with the matchup of styles that this fight presents, I think it makes it a winnable fight for Tony. Not an easy fight by any means, but a winnable fight. I think both of these guys will be landing on one another. In some ways, it's going to be who can take the shots better, who wears the damage more. My gut says that Tony Ferguson pulls this one out. I think he's going to be perhaps a higher level striker. I don't see Dariush having any glaring advantages in this fight. And look for a potential performance bonus by one of these guys. Whoever wins this fight, you're possibly looking at a performance bonus here. Again, I am going to go with Tony Ferguson. I think he's going to kind of turn back the clock and show us some of the Tony Ferguson of old. I think he's really hungry for it.
Yeah, I think this has a lot of potential to be a really close fight because I was going back and forth like you. I was going Ferguson. I was thinking Ferguson's pressure. Dariush doesn't really like that heavy pressure, but he's dealt with it. He's dealt with different style of fighters. The more I looked into it, Beneil deserves more credit. Like, he's a high level grappler. He was able to out grapple Diego Ferreira. And he did it twice to him, right? So he's definitely a high level black belt. And I know Ferguson has wrestling, he has jiu-jitsu. I just think Beneil has the better grappling. I think he's able to get the body lock, get him on the ground. If not, I think if they're standing, I think there's going to be a left hand coming Ferguson's way. I just think that the age 37, he's not the same guy. I don't want to say he's washed up. I'll never say that about Ferguson because you never know. He can come out this weekend and surprise everybody. And I wouldn't really be surprised deep down. But I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush. I think right now he has more tools. I think right now he's a more dangerous fighter. He's able to win the fight grappling for 3 rounds. I think when they're standing up, I think that left hand's going to be there all day. Ferguson gets hit. He gets hit a lot. So, yeah, I like Beneil Dariush. I think his age, I think the age is going to be a big factor here. If Ferguson loses this, if he loses this bad, he's done, in my opinion. Not done in terms of he can go to Bellator, he can fight the lower guys in UFC, but he's done at that championship level if he loses this fight in a bad way. And I think that could happen. But I'm going to go Beneil Dariush to win the fight. I'll take him by decision. But again, he could finish Ferguson, right? I'm not sure where Ferguson's at, right? So I'm going to go Beneil Dariush.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, for that, those same thoughts were kind of my initial thoughts when I was initially thinking Dariush for this one. But I think Tony has one more left in him, to not necessarily be at the championship level, but to really kind of be in that top 4 level and really stay there. I think he has maybe a few more fights left in him to be able to do that. But to your point, if Dariush gets him out of here, I mean, Ferguson, respectably, because you can't ever say he's done, but he is done from a UFC championship perspective if Dariush gets it done on Saturday. Why don't we move on to our main event? In that case, it's a very tough fight. We've been talking about this fight since it was announced, and I still think I'm kind of going back and forth in my pick. Main event of the evening, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This is for the vacant lightweight title. Man, this is a fight. How do you feel about it?
Man, we saw Charles Oliveira. He's been getting way better, eh? So now he's showing us a very much improved stand-up striking. His ground game, he's always had it, but he just seems a bit more dangerous now. He's one of the best grapplers, like pure jiu-jitsu in the UFC at this point. And that's what makes him dangerous against a lot of these guys, especially these guys that want to wrestle and make their living on the ground, because they're scared to go to the ground with him. When you look at the Kevin Lee fight, Jared Gordon, that didn't last long, but these guys are reluctant to go to the ground with this guy, right? So it's gonna be a tough fight, because I think when it comes to striking from range, I give Charles Oliveira. I think he's the better striker from range. He's more diverse. He throws kicks. He mixes it up well. I believe he has a submission advantage. Now, when it comes to athleticism, the strength of the fighters, I think Chandler's the stronger guy. I think he's a strong guy. He has like a thick neck. Like, it's gonna be hard to submit this guy. It's gonna be hard to choke this guy out. A lot of guys had his neck. A lot of guys had him in chokes, and they haven't been able to choke him out. And that's Oliveira is one of his go-tos, right? The guillotine, right? So, or even taking the back and choking you out. But Chandler has never been, and he's fought a lot of black belts. This is a hard fight to call. I agree, but I actually believe Chandler is going to win this fight. I think that he's going to bully. I think he's going to bully Oliveira. This is a 5-round fight. So Chandler has done this on many occasions in Bellator. He's been in fights where he's losing and comes back. Like, he shows that, like, he's been in 5-round fights where he won the first round, lost the second, third's close, and then he wins the fourth and fifth, right? He comes back. Like, he has that heart. He's shown it in these 5-round wars in Bellator, and he's been at this high level. I know he just came to the UFC, but arguably he's been fighting at a high level, pretty close to Oliveira, maybe higher than Oliveira, maybe, because he's been fighting the best. Like, he's been fighting the best over there in Bellator, and there's been some good opposition over there. We can't discredit Bellator. I think he's going to bully him. I think that as the fight goes on, I think Oliveira is going to get tired. I think that the wrestling, I think the athleticism, the physique, the cardio of Chandler, I think as the fight goes on, she's gonna keep draining him. I know every time he goes in and gets the takedown, there's that threat he can get caught in a submission. That's just the game. That's just the way it is. But I don't want to put my money on that guy on his back pulling off a submission. I want to put my money on the guy that I believe that's going to be bullying, that's going to be on top, that's going to be dictating where the fight goes. And I believe that's Chandler. I believe that he's going to be able to dictate what's going on. And if you really watch Oliveira's fights, when things are going well, they go great. But in some fights, like if they don't go well, they go downhill pretty quick, right? So, again, he's on a real good streak right now, a real good he's on a real good winning streak. But a lot of those guys are questionable. Clay Guida, Giagos, Jim Miller, Tamor, Nicolens, Jared Gordon, Kevin Lee, and Tony Ferguson, right? So Ferguson's not the same. So I'm going to go Michael Chandler here. I think he's going to bully Oliveira, and I think that he's going to test his cardio. And I think I'm not saying he's going to break Oliveira, but I believe as the fight goes on, Oliveira is going to be, he's not going to be able to get off, right? Because Chandler's going to be able to go 5 rounds easy. So Chandler's my pick. I'm going to bank on his cardio, his wrestling, his athleticism, and I think he can stay out of danger. He trains with really good guys. I think Chandler can actually like fight like Kamaru Usman. Like I think he can pull that approach off. Just stay standing, jab, hooks, and then hold him against the cage, take him down. Like I think he can pull that off, right? So I like Chandler in this fight.
Yeah, I think Chandler definitely has that ability, and I won't just simply regurgitate what you're saying. I think there's a lot of reasons to like Michael Chandler, and again, this is one of those fights, just like we were talking about in the last fight with Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. This is one of those fights where as soon as it was announced, we were talking about it, and my pick was Michael Chandler for a very long time for every reason that you mentioned, and I think to that last point that you mentioned, I can absolutely see that Usman style of win occurring for Michael Chandler. Staying on the feet as necessary, but really using that strength, using that wrestling, using the clinch, and again the physical advantages that he will have because he will be the stronger fighter. Something about Charles Oliveira though, man, his streak. I know it's not necessarily against the highest level of fighters, but the way that he's pulling these wins off, I'm finding to be really impressive. I know Ferguson, wasn't the same, but we saw him outstrike Ferguson, right? We see how deadly his chokes are. We've seen him, take guys to the ground and really, implement dominant styles in a lot of different ways. He's a really complete fighter at this point. He can strike, he can take you down. Of course, we know his grappling, really good top position on the ground. Landed takedowns on Tony Ferguson with ease. Michael Chandler is obviously a much different fighter than that. Chandler, in some ways, I'm not going to say he's a one-trick pony, but in terms of what he offers on the feet, if Charles Oliveira's striking IQ is up there, he'll be able to read Michael Chandler right away because Chandler's striking style is somewhat repetitive. I will say, though, he does have underrated striking IQ, Michael Chandler, because if you watch that fight versus Dan Hooker, really pay attention to that fight. He set up that big shot by constantly throwing, constantly throwing twos to the body to lower the guard of Dan Hooker. And then I think he threw a 2 upstairs that didn't really fully land, but then he landed with the 3 upstairs, if I'm not mistaken, to land, to catch Hooker by surprise. So I'm not taking away from Michael Chandler's striking IQ at all. Definitely has it, good in and out movement in the stand-up, mixes his punches up well. Like I said, he goes to the body. And I've talked about it many times on here. When you see a striker going to the body, that typically tells you that striker has a higher level of IQ. And he doubles up those body strikes as wrestling threats. So it really makes the opponent think. And to your point, I mean, he could catch Oliveira, man. He has that touch of death power. He really does. We saw it versus Dan Hooker in that prediction. I think I was going with Dan Hooker for having more tools, but Michael Chandler got rid of him very quickly. I might be kicking myself for going with this decision, but I think again I have to go with the fighter that just has a little bit more to offer, or sort of more importantly, that I think has more ways to win the fight. And I think that fighter is Charles Oliveira. I think he can outstrike Michael Chandler. I think, of course, with the amount of wrestling that Chandler will do, it's going to leave submission opportunities available for Oliveira. I can see why you want to go with Chandler for sure, and I can definitely agree with it. But again, I'm going to go with my gut here. This was somewhat of a last-minute change just over the past couple of days, whereas over the past few weeks, I felt Michael Chandler was my pick. Over the last few days, I'm really starting to lean on the side of Charles Oliveira. I think this title has been very, elusive for him. In this sort of second wind of a career that he's had, I think this is his time to hold the gold. So I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira on this one. Tough fight, entertaining fight. Let's see what happens. But you know what? Let's take it to Vegas. Why don't we try to make some money? How do we feel about the entire card? Let's start with an underdog pick for the entire card.
Underdog pick. I like Barboza, he's an underdog?
Yep, plus 110.
Yeah, I like Barboza in that spot. And Chandler's an underdog. I like Chandler.
Two good picks there. Edson Barboza and Michael Chandler, both on the main card. I'm going to echo the Edson Barboza pick, and I'm going to go with, again, the gut check. I'm going with Tony Ferguson as a second underdog that I really, think has an opportunity to pull his respective fight out. So in terms of now favorite picks or parlay picks, or what fights are we possibly considering betting on?
Yeah, I like Mike Grundy, parlayed with Viviane Araujo.
Okay. So some solid value there. You get a plus 278 two-fight parlay. $100 will return 378. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 945. So definitely some money to be made there. If I'm thinking about what my perhaps favorite picks are, I'm going to, let's see here. I might be sticking with my undercard picks here. I think, again, the main card is pretty tough to pick any one of those fighters specifically. So I'm going to stick with my underdog picks. Oh, sorry, my undercard picks. Prelim card picks, I should say. Tucker Lutz and Matt Schnell. Again, if you watched the prelim video, you would have heard this already, but I will repeat it for our main card audience. Two fights plus 185. $100 will return 285. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 714. So why don't we leave it there? UFC 262, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Again, this one is in front of UFC fans. Let's see how much of an impact the fans play in this card. But in the meantime, do all that algorithmic stuff that's going to help us out. Subscribe to the channel, comment on our videos. Let's have some really good conversation as to who you guys feel are perhaps your favorite picks of the card, or some parlays that you're perhaps considering. If you do want additional insight on your respective parlay picks, mention it in the comments and we will make sure we pick it apart as best as we can. In the meantime, he goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. This is Boxing MMA Picks, giving you another UFC prediction and analysis video. UFC 262, Oliveira versus Chandler. Let's get this money.
Let's do it.